Hello and welcome to my last weekly vlog of October. This will only be 3 days. Today's Friday, Sunday is Halloween, and I will also add in my wrap-up at the end of this. So if you're only interested in that, you can skip ahead. I will chapter this video so you know where to go if you only want to see my complete October wrap-up. But if you also want to see the vlog for these last couple of days, just stay tuned. So I'm currently reading Deathless Divide. This is such an evil word if you're not an English native speaker. Yeah, this is the second book to Dread Nation. I'm almost halfway through. It is amazing. Dread Nation was my surprise hit of the month, so I'm very glad that I got my hands on the sequel quite quickly and can finish this hopefully in the next 3 days and let you know more. So far, it's very action-packed, very high stakes, and shit is going down, so I'm very excited to read the rest of this. And then I also started a new audiobook, Payback's a Witch. I forgot the author's name, but it's one of those hyped Halloweenish romance books. I needed something a little lighter and more cozy now. That always happens to me as soon as Halloween is done. I'm not in the spooky mood anymore, but I'm transitioning into the Christmas mood. So I thought this would be a good book to kind of bridge me over. We'll see about that. I've only listened to the first chapter or something, so I can't really say anything about it yet. But yeah, that will probably not be finished in this vlog. But I'm still excited to start this book. I'm not a romance reader, though, so this might go terribly wrong. But it's a female-female romance, and it has that witchy atmosphere. So we'll try. And yeah, it's noon. I'm gonna head out and go grocery shopping, and then I have to work a little bit more before I can start my weekend. So yeah, fingers crossed we can get all the things done quickly. So I am halfway through now, and there is a 1.5 year time jump. And I just do not like time jumps in my books. Why? But yeah, we'll see how the rest goes. So it is Saturday, 1 day left till Halloween, and I've just done all the cleaning, and we are baking a fancy cake for the occasion. And now we're going to do a pumpkin for this year, and yeah, we'll see how it goes, what kind of design we're going for. But yeah, let's do it.
Wenn ich lache, wackelt doch das Bild.
I'm sorry.
Dinner. So it is Halloween today. I honestly don't remember when I updated this last. Yeah, I don't know. Days have been a blur, but it's in the afternoon now. I have a problem with my shoulder. I don't know what I did, but it hurts real bad, so I only have one arm to film on, so I try to keep this one short. But yeah, last night was a party in my house, and I am still very tired because, yeah, I just can't sleep well when there's noise. But I did some reading sprints this morning, or I joined some reading sprints in the chat this morning, which was very lovely. And I am now 410 pages into the Deathless Divide. Now, in the middle of this book, unfortunately, there is a time jump of a year and a half. And I think I mentioned that before, but just in case I did not, I do not like time jumps in books, and I did not like this one. And unfortunately, after the time jump, I can't find back into the story. Like, the characters have changed so much, especially Jane, the main character, that I just don't know what to do with her now. And yeah, I don't know. It feels like there is a book missing. Like, I had read the first book and now I'm reading the third book, but skipped the second one. That's kind of what it feels like. So yeah, that's kind of sad because I wanted to give this 5 stars as well, and the beginning definitely was that. But yeah, after the time jump now, I'm struggling a bit. I would love to finish this today, so it would still count as a second tome for tome topple, but that is still quite a way to go. It's like over 100 pages more, so I will read more now, but I cannot promise that I will finish it today. Either way, it's Halloween, so tonight I will definitely watch the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And yeah, we carved the pumpkin yesterday. We still have some lovely cake left over from yesterday, and we had pumpkin soup for lunch. So it's a perfect kind of chill Halloween Sunday. And yeah, I guess I will read now.
Definitely, Lana, packing plans. Is some new partner? I feel like we already have this in game.
So I finished editing my last reading vlog for last week and just uploaded it. And I also wrote a blog post about the audiobook I finished in the last vlog, which was The Haunting of Leigh Harker, which unfortunately was a very big disappointment for me. But that means now I am ready to read some more. I will not finish this book today. I'm just not in the mood to really push for it, but I still want to make it as far as I can get, so I can finish this off probably tomorrow. And then tomorrow will already be November, and there's 3 things actually that's going on that I would like to participate in some way. So first thing is the nonfiction November. I actually have a lot of nonfiction books that I still want to read this year, so I want to at least read 3 books for that. Then there is a novella November, which you're supposed to read novellas. And again, I think I do have 3 novellas that I could potentially read for that, so I'm intrigued to do that. And then there is Indigeson as well, which I would love to participate in. Right now I have There checked out from the library, so that would fit. I also wanted to read, what's it called? It was really big last year. The Good Indian? What's it called? I forgot now. I'm so bad with names. And then also Braiding Sweetgrass, I think it's called. I've seen only good things about that book, and that would also be a non-fiction book. So a lot of interesting things going on in November, but then I have so many books still checked out from the library as well. I don't know. My reading life is a mess, and I threw out all of my October reading plans for House of Leaves and Deathless Divide. So yeah. What am I supposed to do? I don't know. But you will see if you watch my channel in November. So it's exciting as well, right? So many good books out there. So that was it. I managed to read up to page 470 in Deathless Divide. I still have a little bit to go to finish this book, but that will be included in my November vlog, which will be a month-long vlog again. So if you're interested in this, my final conclusion, you will see it later. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed these October vlogs. I had a fun time doing them, and you know, just not daily vlogging, but like weekly vlogging, which is a little bit different than I usually do it. I didn't have like the best books this year, which is a bit unfortunate, but you know, you never know how much you like a book before you start reading it, and that's totally fine. So that was it for the October vlogs, and now let's get into the October wrap-up. So it is time for the wrap-up part of this video, so let's get into all the books I read in October. So the first book I finished in October was Nujeen by Mustafa. This is a similar book to I Am Malala. It is written by a refugee girl from Syria named Nujeen, and she uses a wheelchair, and she had to flee from Syria because of the war, and we follow her in this memoir style book from her early life, kind of what her disability means for her life in Syria, and then as the war breaks out, how her family decides to keep everyone safe, and then we follow her flight together with her sister, her escape from Syria, and yeah, she was basically trying to make her way to Germany. And I really liked this book. I gave it 4 stars. It is written for teenagers, so it is a very light non-fiction if you want to get into those. I also think it's a very important book for people in the EU, especially if you are in Germany like me. I think this is a fantastic book to read, to really understand the hardships that people go through to come to Germany as refugees. And this is a book I will probably get for my grandma for Christmas, because yeah, I always realized that she doesn't really understand what's happening with these people, why they are refugees, why they're trying to come to Germany. So I think this would be a very helpful book. I really liked that it was written for teenagers as well. It had a lot of potential where you can see yourself in Nujeen as well. For example, she really likes soap operas and watching TV, and that's actually how she learned English, which is also very interesting. I also also learned English mostly through like media consumption and not through school. So I think that a lot of people nowadays can kind of empathize with that, you know, that we watch more and more English TV shows and movies and listen to English songs, and that's how we learn the language, for example. And yeah, just overall, I really enjoyed the experience of reading this book. It was a very quick, easy read, but still very important and with some great information, and I would highly recommend it. Then the next book I finished was The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. I already had to return both of these books to the library, but if you want to see the covers, they're in my first October reading vlog, obviously. The Lost Apothecary is a bit of a hype book. I've seen it in other videos as well, so when I saw it in the library, I snatched it up. This is a book that follows 3 women, 2 in, I think, the 18th century or even the 17th century in London, and then an American woman in nowadays times who comes to London for her 10-year anniversary of her marriage, but actually she just found out that her husband cheated on her, so she's coming alone, and she always wanted to be a historian, but she gave that dream up for her marriage. And so when she's now there, feeling all betrayed by her husband, she starts digging a little bit in the history of London, and she finds this intriguing little while, I don't know how you call it, but yeah, that sends her on a way to discover probably this lost apothecary. And in the historic timeline, we follow this woman who sells poisons to other women who are maltreated by men, and we follow one of her customers as well. I really liked this book. I was actually quite surprised by it. I really enjoyed the kind of historical atmosphere of the book, but I also really liked the kind of researchy bits in the nowadays timeline. I was really surprised how much I liked it. It's very short for historical fiction, and I thought it was interesting. The build-up of the tension in the second half of the book was very good in my opinion. It does have a little bit of magical realism in it, so if you don't like that, maybe the ending will be disappointing for you, but I liked it. I thought it was well done. My little notebook says I gave it 4.5 stars, so I guess I would recommend this book if you're into these kinds of stories. Then the next book I finished was Broken Things by Lauren Oliver. I have a separate reading vlog where I read this and 2 other YA books. This is a book that had been on my wish list for a couple of years, but it's just never been high enough to pick it up. This is basically a YA thriller with some spooky elements, and it follows 2 girls who are now 18, Mia and Bryn, and 5 years ago they have been said to have killed their best friend Summer, and this follows them getting back onto the case and trying to figure out what really happened, because they're sure that they didn't do it. And there was also the guy, what's his name? It doesn't say back here. But there's also a guy who was said to be Summer's boyfriend at the time, and he was investigated as well as the killer, but also they couldn't really prove that it was him. And he helps the 2 girls figure out what's going on. They also get the help of Mia's new best friend, which was my favorite character of the book, because she is an influencer, like a social media person, and she is also fat and she has an amazing humor. I really enjoyed her, and there is a tiny little bit of romance between that character and Bryn as well, which could have been expanded a little bit more in my opinion. But yeah, this was a fun read, a solid YA book. I think that the conclusion wasn't like super great, and as always with these kinds of books, I hate it when the characters just stumble upon the solution. They didn't really, they tried to investigate it, but all their leads would go dead, and yeah, that's just something that I just don't like. I want them to really investigate and be successful and not just stumble upon it in the end. So overall, I decided to give this book 3.5 stars because it was a fun, solid read, but just not mind-blowing. But then I read The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, which is a book that has been on my TBR since I watched the TV show, obviously. I loved the TV show and I was a little bit hesitant to go into this book because I knew that it was completely different. You have a couple of the same character names, so you have Eleanor, you have Theodora, and you have Luke. But they are completely different people. They're not related to each other as they are in the TV show. So I wasn't really sure what to expect. Also, a lot of people said that they didn't find this scary. So for some reason, I thought it wasn't really a haunted house book at all. But I was surprised to find it is. So there is some haunting going on and some phenomena. I really loved this book. I really think that Shirley Jackson just works for me. I also loved We Have Always Lived in the Castle, and that is also a book that some people don't really like. But Shirley Jackson just clicks with me and I will definitely read more of her. I really enjoyed this. I think that the exploration of Eleanor as a character was very interesting. She's basically the main character that you're following. And in this book, Eleanor is invited by a doctor to live for a summer in Hill House. And the doctor is trying to scientifically prove that there is like spirits. And there's also Theodora, who was also invited to stay at the house. And Luke is basically the owner of the house. I think his aunt is the owner, but he's there to represent her or his family. And yeah, they're spending time at this house and weird stuff starts happening, but it's really an exploration of Eleanor and the way that she has never had any room to have her own life, and this is like the first thing she ever decided for herself, and it's not going so well. But yeah, just read the book. It's not that long, and I gave it 5 stars. I loved it. Like, as I said, Shirley Jackson is just for me. I think I still like We Have Always Lived in the Castle a little bit more, but they're both great, so. Then I finished my audiobook Small Favors by Erin A. Gregg. This is also a book that I read in this reading vlog with Small Favors. No, with Broken Things, sorry. Small Favors is a dark fairy tale retelling, or yeah, it's not really a retelling because it doesn't really retell a certain fairy tale, but it has this vibe and it has elements of fairy tales that we know. Mostly it reminded me of Rumpelstiltskin, but it probably has some other influences as well. The main thing being just the creepy woods and then some magical beings in these woods that will grant favors but expect something in return. This book was really interesting because as the first book of Erin A. Gregg, A House of Salt and Sorrow, it's quite a slow story and a slow build-up, and you really have to go along with the book there and just let it work its magic. What I really loved about Small Favors is that you don't really know where it's going. I thought it was a very unique storyline, and you're basically watching this very secluded town unravel itself. So we are following a main character, and her family is the family of the beekeepers in this town. It isn't really set in a specific time, but it has that kind of settlers feel a little bit. So this town is just in the mountains, very secluded, and during the winter basically no one can get there because of the mountains. So they usually have supply runs into a town where they get like sugar and coffee and other things like that, medical stuff. But the supply run actually ends very badly and all the men are killed on the way. And so they are now at this point where they don't really know what to do. They don't have supplies for the winter, but also something very bad seems to be out in the woods and they're actually scared of going out there. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this book because it has this slow creeping atmosphere and you just, you know, watch it build up and kind of bad things happening and happening again and again and just escalating. I don't know. It's a very interesting book, and I think it's not for everyone. I think if you're looking for like fast-paced, action-packed books, this is definitely not the one. But if you like that slow, creeping horror, where just you never really know what's gonna happen next and you are more afraid of other people than the actual monsters, I think you could really, really like this. I really liked it. I decided to give it 4 stars. I had a good time with the audiobook as well. I thought the narrator did a good job, and yeah, I can recommend it. Then the next book I finished was Dread Nation by Justina Ireland. This is a book that I also had checked out from the library, but I loved it so much that I got my own copy, and I also got the sequel, which I started but did not finish in October, unfortunately. So if you want to hear more about the sequel, you have to watch the November vlog. But Dread Nation basically follows a girl called Jane McKean, and she is mixed race. One of her parents is black and the other one white. And she lives after the Civil War, but this is an alternate history. So after or during the Civil War, a zombie plague started. So the dead were rising again and starting to feed on the living. And so people had to figure out ways to survive in a zombie apocalypse. And obviously, since racism was a great topic back then, the thing they came up with was combat schools for black children and also indigenous children. And in these schools, these kids were taught how to kill zombies to keep white people safe. And so this is an alternate history, but it picks upon a lot of important themes of our real history. Also, I think in the back of this book, the author explained that this was slightly inspired by the schools for indigenous children that really existed, where children were often taken away from their cameras, stripped of all their cultural heritage, and just brought up to be a Christian, and they got Christian names and stuff like that, which was obviously a very horrible thing. Even talking about it, I just feel so bad. But yeah, this is what inspired the story, and obviously all of the other racism going on during the time and still. So yeah, we're following Jane, who is trained in one of those combat schools to kill zombies, and then things start going wrong. And I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. I think this is very underrated. I have seen this a lot when it came out, but honestly, even more people need to read this. I thought it was so fast-paced and action-packed. It actually reminded me of Hunger Games a little bit in that aspect, that you just can't put it down because something's always happening and you always have to keep reading. I read the second half of this book in 1 day, which is very unusual for me. So yeah, it was definitely an amazing book, and I would highly, highly recommend that you pick it up. I've always been hesitant because of the zombie aspect. I'm not the biggest fan of zombies. I don't think they're very scary, and I feel like all the zombie stories are the same, but in this one it just worked. It just worked really, really well, and I love Jane as a main character as well. She was really cool. I love the connection that she had with her mother, and also the kind of reveals we got in the book about that. It was just all very well done. I really loved this book. Okay, and then we get to the big book of October, which was House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. Oh my, this book. I wasn't planning on reading this book, but I am on a Discord server where a couple of people were reading this for October, and then I went into a bookshop just to browse, and I found this copy. It was the only one they had, and I bought it. I wanted not to miss out on the body read, so I did it. This book is definitely special. As you can guess, it is huge, but it has yeah, very interesting experimental styles with the text. So basically, we have 2 storylines in this book. We have one storyline that is, I think, set in the 90s or something, because this book is a little bit old as well. When did it come out? So this book is from the year 2000. So yeah, the now storyline is, I think, in the late 90s. And during that storyline, we follow a guy called John. I think it's John. Yeah, John. And he has a friend, and together they go on very sex and drug heavy adventures. And this friend calls him up and is like, hey, my neighbor just died and you want to come over and see his flat. And so John goes to this place and they find a manuscript. A manuscript that is basically like a very long essay about a movie. But the twist is that this movie does not exist. So this is basically a very long manuscript analyzing a movie that does not exist, and that's what we're reading here. So we're following this manuscript, and in this movie that does not exist, we follow a person called Nevinson, and he is a photojournalist. He won a Pulitzer Prize, and he now wants to move in with his family into a new home. His girlfriend, it's not his wife, they're not married, but she has basically been like, you can either come here and live with us or you just leave forever, because she's kind of annoyed at always being left behind by him. And so they move into this family home, but he can't really leave work out of it, and so he installs cameras all over the house to do like a documentary about his domestic life. And then weird things start to happen, and that leads to him finding out that his house is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, and things get even crazier from there. So this book is not a haunted house series or a haunted house book. I think people assume that because it is House of Leaves and the house plays a very big role, but it's not really a haunted house in a traditional sense. It is very disturbing, the book. It gave me nightmares. It's very immersive. So at first it is a little bit of a struggle to get into it, but since this is written in quite an academic style, and that's what I usually read at work because I am, you know, researcher, I got into it quite quickly, and you just fall into this book. It's just really weird. Like, when you read this, you don't really feel the time passing, and then you look up and you're like, oh my god, I just read for 2 hours. Where did that time go? So it's definitely a book that I do not recommend, but it's a book that if you're interested in reading something really special, I think this one is good. There's a reason why this is still kind of like a cult classic hyped up book 20 years after it's been released. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about this. I talked about it in my vlogs, obviously, and it is a very, very special book that I think you have to experience. It plays a lot with the content of the text and how it is presented. So, for example, there is a chapter about mazes, and in the chapter you basically have a maze of footnotes that you can follow and get lost in. And there is also other things. I don't want to take them away because if you read it, it's like really interesting to figure out what it's done there. It was pretty wild, and this is definitely a book I will reread someday because I feel like I probably missed things. I gave it 4 stars just because the storyline of John, which is written in the footnotes, just was not that interesting to me, and I felt like in the end I wanted to have a little bit more of a crossover of John's story and the manuscript, and I just felt like the ending wasn't quite what I wanted for all the work that I put into this book. But yeah, 4 stars. If you want to try it, I would recommend it. But if you're like, that sounds ridiculous, I don't want to read that, don't. That's basically what I will say about that. Okay. And I think I only finished one more book after that, and that was my audiobook, The Haunting of Leigh Harker by Darcy Coates. It's the new Darcy Coates book, it just came out, and I was very excited about it because Darcy Coates usually does very classic haunted house stories, which are my favorite kind of horror, if you had guessed. This one was a big disappointment though, I'm very sad to say. This book tried something new, which is always cool, like you can try something new, but it doesn't mean you have to publish it, to be honest. Now, Darcy Coates, as I said, writes haunted house stories, and with this one it's a bit weird because you start off with the haunting. So you basically start the book and right off the bat the character that you don't really know yet wakes up in the middle of the night and she knows that something is in her house. And that's where you go from there. And I listened to the audiobook, and about the first third of the audiobook is just that. Like, she's in her house, she's like, something is here with me. It's not a person and it is scary as fuck. What's going on? And then after that third, you get a plot twist, which is the first actual plot you're given. Up until then, you're just following these creepy scenes. And then that plot twist just was not very surprising. Like, I guessed it from even the title of the book. But then very early on I was like, oh my god, is it going to do that? Because it is a trope that I usually like, but I don't know. So the plot twist happened, and after that you basically have a murder mystery. Like, it's not a real horror anymore because, you know, it's just not a horror anymore. And so, yeah, the murder mystery part wasn't that great, unfortunately. And the conclusion of the book was just not good, in my opinion. I just was not satisfied with it. As I said, the author tried to do something there, but it did not work for me. So in the end, I gave it 3 stars, and that was very sad because I wanted to really like this book. And yeah, that's my reading for October. I also started reading this book. This is The Turn of the Screw and Other Ghost Stories by Henry James. I only read 2 of those stories so far, so I can't really talk about it yet. But I will continue reading this in November and hopefully finish it in November. So I think that's it. So congratulations, you survived the video. If you liked it, leave a like or a nice comment. I always appreciate those. And if you subscribe, I will talk to you soon. Bye.